All right, guys. Well, welcome to the Rotary Club of El Paso meeting. Very excited to have you guys here. And as always, Mark has put a tremendous, excellent program, and it's actually a good friend of Rotary. So welcome, everyone. And as starting with traditions, we're going to start off with the invocation, pledge, and four-way test. But before we do that, I want to mention that when I was in Rotary, the actual meetings in place, physical, the scariest part of showing up to Rotary is somebody approaching you to do the invocation, pledge, and four-way test. For me, that was the scariest part. But thank goodness I reached out to Valerie Garcia, and Valerie was up to the challenge. So Valerie is going to kick off the invocation, pledge, and four-way test. So take it away, Valerie.
Thank you, Yasser. No pressure whatsoever. So. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good afternoon. So if we could bow our heads for the invocation. Holy Father, we gather here today to offer praise to you for bringing us back together again this day. We gather here today through the strength of heaven, the light of the sun, the splendor of the fire, the swiftness of the wind, the depth of the sea, the stability of the earth. With your wisdom to guide us, your eye to look before us, your ear to hear us, your word to speak for us, your way to lie before us, your shield to protect us. We're thankful that despite not being able to come together in person, you have delivered this day for us to share and break bread again virtually across the ether. We offer our prayers and your protection over those in this group who could not join us today. And we ask that you anoint Emma and bless it in her blessed words that she will share with us. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. Amen. We'll do Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance of the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the four-way test. Number one, is it the truth?
Is
Two,
it fair
to all concerned?
Three,
will it build goodwill and better friendships? Four, will it be beneficial
to all concerned?
All right, Valerie. Good job. You know, I used to get super nervous when I did the pledge, and it's like, I don't know why I get nervous. Maybe it's because I did it since kindergarten, and something as simple, you're like, I don't want to mess it up. But very, very good job, Valerie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so if we can make sure that everyone's on mute at this point, but we got as part of our pop-up guests, and the pop-up guest is somebody who was in the community. We tell them about Rotary, and just it's a surprise guest. And Andy Watley's going to introduce her guest here in a second. But this is going to make everybody really hungry. So I'm sure people haven't had lunch yet, but you guys are into a special treat here. So I'll let Andy Watley kick it off, our pop-up guest.
Great, thank you, Yasser. Our guest today is a gentleman by the name of Kevin Huckabee. He is the founder, CEO, and the leader of a company called Tuscan Cattle, which is part of the Florence Cattle Group. And Kevin's got a very interesting product and service today. He is introducing to the U.S. marketplace, and is headquartered here in El Paso, a steak or beef called Chianina. If you've never heard of it before, it is the oldest on the planet, I understand, and it comes from Italy. And he's brought the embryo here, and I think Kevin, it'd be interesting to have you share a little bit about Chianina, a little bit about your background, and where you're going with this thing.
All right. Thank you, Andy. It's kind of a long, convoluted story that I don't even remember some of it because it wasn't intentional on some of it in the very beginning. But I got into raising cattle just to get out of boredom. I had a motorcycle wreck and was kind of sidelined from work for a while and was looking for something else to do. So I started raising some cattle, and Angus being the thing that everybody does, that's what I did. And just wasn't real exciting. You know, we'd go feed the cows, you know, the guy, the Dunkin' Donuts guy. It's kind of what I was with feeding the cows. But something told me that there was something more, because I'd always wanted to get back to the cattle industry. My grandparents and parents were in it when I was a kid. They sold the farms. I think I was 14. And I certainly didn't want to get back to farming. That's an awful lot of hard work, but the cattle really interested me. And so I started looking around for a different breed and something that would be exciting to do. And so I got Oklahoma State's catalog that they've got of 800 something cattle breeds. And I didn't make it too far in it, somewhere in the seas where I hit the name Chianina. And it just was kind of shocking. There was a cow and a calf on a Italian hillside, and I was sold. So we started looking into it, trying to find out how many of them we could get. Got really disappointed real quick. There were none to be had in the U.S. There were some that people were calling Chianina, but they were actually crossbred Black Angus looking animals, nothing like the original Chianina. And anyway, so I was really disappointed, kind of put out that I wasn't going to be able to get them, but I wasn't going to give up. So I started looking out abroad, and I found a herd in South Africa and a guy that seemed to know what he was doing. And we started making plans on how to get some of his cattle to me. But lo and behold, we couldn't do that either because of the foot and mouth disease. And so we've had to back up and start over again. So I was on some kind of a chat one night, and I found several people that had Chianina on their little webpage, or their, I guess their picture they had associated with their name. Anyway, I found 5 of them, and I sent them all messages asking them what they would do if they were in my position and trying to get the cattle in the U.S. And all 5 of them gave me a name of a guy in Italy that was an embryologist. And I was kind of intrigued by this because I found out that I couldn't bring the cattle in from Italy either because of the same reason. Foot and mouth disease was there at one time. And so they didn't allow live cattle to be exported from there to the United States. So, I got a hold of Enzo, and it was kind of a whirlwind story. We talked and had an awful lot of things in common. My desire to have Chianina and him having them was probably the best part of it. So we started making plans to get them here, but it was still pretty disappointing because it was going to be a couple of years before we could actually have an animal on the ground that we could call a Chianina. And then a while then before they matured and we could get into the beef end of it. And so I still wasn't real satisfied. And I heard from a guy that had been around for a while around the Chianina breed that there was a herd down in Monterrey, Mexico, and wound up, make a long story short, we wound up contracting that herd, and we bring in live cattle from there now, have been since 2016, I think is the first load that we brought in from there, and it brought quite a few of them up since. And that comprises part of the group that we're doing, and then we're importing the embryos to start our own U.S. herd because the best genetics are in Italy. We found that some of these animals were just incredible, and they were as tall. Some of them this guy's had were as tall as 6'7" and 4,000 pounds for them. So anyway, we got permission from the Italian government to import them. We were at that point, and may still be the only person that could bring those out of Italy into the U.S. And we started implanting those in cattle recently, and we'll have, within a few months here, we'll have our first Italian bred Texas raised cattle on the ground. And we're real proud of that. The beef that's come from it has been another surprise altogether. I thought if, we got something as good as Angus and we could sell that, we'd be in great shape, because everybody in the nation knows what an Angus is, and it's good cattle, it's good beef.
Kevin,
yes, sir.
Thank you so much for being our pop-up guest. Just one quick question as we get through the program. Do you guys deliver?
Depends on how much money's in your wallet there, yes. Yes, here in town, we're trying to do that. if we got too busy, we'd probably contract a service or something. But right now, we personally deliver.
That's excellent. And Kevin, this is very interesting and it sounds very delicious. I'm excited about it. Thank you so much for being a pop-up guest and congratulations. That is an incredible story. And we are looking forward to tasting the Canina local beef and congratulations on this amazing.
You can get it down at the Ambar Hotel right now.
Oh, okay. They're good friends. So thank you so much for being a pop-up guest.
Thank y'all for inviting me. And
thank
we
you.
can get the rest of the story some other time.
Thank you, Kevin. You're welcome to stick around, and we have a great presentation, and you have friends here in Rotary, and we look forward to seeing you again.
I'd like to see you all in person sometime soon. Maybe we can all do that.
Excellent.
Peace.
So,
All right.
everyone, and I believe there's some visiting guests also. Jennifer, I believe you have a guest to introduce.
I do. Thank you, Yasser. I have a guest today, Jerry Aiken. I believe I saw a little bit earlier here. He may have his video and audio off. Maybe he doesn't have access to that right now. But anyway, I'd really love to introduce Jerry. He is a LEED certified architect, and he is right now the Assistant Administrator of Planning and Design and Construction for UMC, and a good friend of ours here at BPSI, and very interested in joining our club. So welcome, Jerry. It's nice to have you. Hopefully you'll enjoy being here, and we'll get you a membership application and get you to be an official member real soon. Thanks, Yasser.
Thank you, Jennifer, and Jerry. Welcome. Welcome. We look forward to seeing you as well. Anyone else visiting Rotarians or guests that would introduce? And by the way, I got a message that people are interested in hearing the rest of the story on Tuscan cattle. So perhaps that will be a potential speaker in the future. So Kevin, you got people's interest.
Well, good. We'll bring you a steak down to eat.
Excellent. That sounds delicious. So moving on a little bit more to announcements. We mentioned last week the success of our Pen Pal project. That was when we wrote letters to residents of a senior living facility. And I want to thank Jessica Vasquez, our Rotarian, for putting that together. Here's a picture of her. Here's the 16 letters. And those of you that participated, thank you so much. And I'm curious to see the response we get from these residents so we can continue on this rewarding project. And next up, we have the member series. Andy Watley was able to reach out to Sawyer Sykes, our Rotarian, and we have a member series. It's a great way to learn more about our Rotarians and why they joined Rotary. So I want to share this video with you guys of Sawyer, and with all the properties are closing, Sawyer is pretty busy here at Stewart Title. So here's Sawyer.
So I was introduced to Rotary probably about 7 or 8 years ago. Got involved at the West Side Rotary Club and really enjoyed the atmosphere and what the mindset and the mission statement was for Rotary. Wasn't very familiar with it beforehand other than hearing about it, and had been a guest at one point in time prior to that as well. Upon moving back to El Paso in July of 2019, Cindy Bilby got me involved again at the Downtown Rotary Club, and I was really excited because the atmosphere and the group in general there definitely has a different mentality, and everyone was very welcoming, and I felt instantly like I was a part of something that I wanted to continue. I very much enjoy that there's this community service, there's a global mindset, there's a business mindset, there's a personal aspect, there's caring about the individuals whose lives that are impacted while we go through things like the pandemic that we're in, helping out with the Christmas program as well, and seeing all those little children getting gifts and getting to help pass out those stockings was a great experience for me. So for me, Rotary is more about what we do for others, and that impact in doing that, how it benefits us as well, candidly. I think that being able to be honest with ourselves that life is more than about just the individual responsibility and more about the impacts that we have on our community and our families and everyone around us is why I want to be a part of Rotary and why I am a part of Rotary.
I love these member series. I always learn something new about our members. And Sawyer, I see you online, and I understand you're super busy at the title company, but thank you for joining us. And by the way, I don't think I've seen so much swag in a video from a Rotarian than that background music. I thought you would be like the lead vocalist of a rock group or something. I would have believed that.
I'm not that cool though, so definitely don't have that much swag. That's all Andy, helping me out there with that side. So
there must have been a little bit of bribe there. Okay, that was awesome. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, great to see you.
You as well.
And I see quite a bit of folks here I haven't seen lately. Kevin and I don't want to point you guys all out, but so glad to have you guys. We have excellent participation online. Those Zoom meetings, everybody zoomed out, but we hit high 30s last week, the 40s. I mean, we are seeing the same amount of numbers as we did in person. So that's very critical to continue the success of our club. Thank you, everybody, so much. But moving on, we got an excellent program here coming up. I forgot this slide. Jim Brewer, you guys didn't have a chance to recognize him and congratulate him. He was a Rotarian of the Month, always very enthusiastic of participating and loves Rotary. So now let's get on to our program. It's a good friend of ours that Mark Mathis will present and give us a little bit more background of somebody we know very well in Rotary. Take it away, Mark.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Yasser. Yeah, and it's really my pleasure to bring back Emma Wollschlager Schwartz. She's the president of the MCA Foundation, and of course, started the beautiful Cardwell Collaborative, which is a freestanding or biomedical incubator, and then also right on campus there is a freestanding VA clinic. So great plans to develop that area. MCA has been very involved in biosciences and just innovation with life sciences within our area, and a lot of initiatives that you can read about in their bio, and many that some of us are familiar with. Emma had a long background in healthcare management before joining MCA, so we were really lucky to get her back. She's an active board member on many of our leading organizations, West Star, Progress 321, Workforce Solutions, Borderplex, and the Borderplex Alliance. And she's also on the CPRIT Product Development Advisory Committee. So she's got a few awards in her past. So she was inducted into the El Paso Business Hall of Fame. She was an El Pasoan of the Year, 2017, and lately Governor Abbott appointed her to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, which I'm sure is very involved in lots of discussions about our school reopening plans here. So Emma's going to talk to us a bit about the response that she's been involved in for COVID-19. She is on the mayor's task force, and she has really done a lot to bring together all of the different parties in healthcare that are responsible for making sure that we all stay safe and get through this pandemic. So Emma, really happy to have you here. Can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I always enjoy speaking to your group. I wish we were eating that good food down in the foundation room, but that'll be for another day. But really, really good to see all of you. And again, thanks for having me. And I know that everyone is probably really sick and tired of talking about the coronavirus. But that's the state of our world right now. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. We get my presentation up because it has been a really fast and furious few months since March, when all of our worlds kind of turned upside down. But I think it's really been a phenomenal time to kind of watch our healthcare community come together, coalesce, collaborate in ways that they have never collaborated before. And And I think that we have a lot of opportunities. And I think your theme this year is really about the future. And I think that what this pandemic has done, in my opinion, is I'm always talking about our ecosystems, our life sciences ecosystem, our healthcare ecosystem, and what do we need to do to enhance it? Well, what this pandemic has done in some ways is enhanced a lot of that ecosystem, especially in terms of relationships and collaboration, but it's also exposed some of the cracks in our ecosystem and where we maybe aren't doing as well as we could be doing. And I think that's an opportunity for us to identify those cracks, and now understanding the impact of having those cracks, we can work together to make our life sciences ecosystem stronger for all of us. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about the coalition that we've put together, and we tried to bring together a bunch of community partners with some outside guidance to help us through this pandemic. When the pandemic hit in March, the first couple of weeks, I think I was sitting back like everybody else is, just watching this traffic accident happening in slow motion kind of in front of us as the world slowly, country by country and then state by state, started being hit by the pandemic, and wondering what was going to happen to us. And in watching that, I realized that there really wasn't a country or a state or a community that was adequately prepared to respond to the coronavirus. I think everyone always had in their business continuity plans a line about a pandemic, and if a pandemic ever happened, we would, institute our business continuity plan, but no one ever really thought it could happen again, I believe. And so in the last few scares we've had with Ebola and other things, we were fortunate not to get hit very hard. So I think it's made us complacent. And so when this happened, we had started a relationship with Battelle Memorial Institute. Battelle actually has a relationship with El Paso since 2009, when Redco, our then Regional Economic Development Corporation, was trying to get Battelle to come into El Paso to do a project and set up a lab here, which would have changed the culture of our life sciences industry significantly. But we weren't ready for them back in 2009. And so that project kind of sunsetted. Last year, we revived conversations with Battelle, and they were very interested in a couple of things: our robust medical device manufacturing industry in El Paso and Juarez, and also with our growing military medical infrastructure, the new William Beaumont, and the opportunities that we potentially have to partner more as a civilian medical community with the military medical community. So they were planning on bringing all of their executives to El Paso in April of this year, when the coronavirus hit, and that obviously got canceled. But because of this new connection we had with Battelle, they sent to me their white paper on Battelle's solution for a pandemic response. And as I'm reading through this, 9-page white paper, I thought, this is exactly what we need to be doing as a community. It's a guide that any country or state or small town could follow. And so we reached out to them and asked if they would come in and consult for us because of the precarious nature of our situation on the border, that we can't fully control our pandemic response because we have this international boundary and we can't control who's coming in and out. And then secondarily, with the global supply chain problems that we had with PPE because China shut down, our medical device production in Juarez became incredibly important not to get disrupted. We needed the masks and the gowns and the ventilators being produced in Juarez to service our community as well as the rest of the world. So Battelle did come in. We signed a contract with Battelle, was able to raise the money to cover that contract completely with private sector partners, including the Hunk companies, the Paul Foster Foundation, the Paso del Norte Health Foundation, El Paso Electric Company, One Gas, TransTelco, Westar Bank, and the Public Service Board. So very generous donors who came in and said, let's bring Battelle in as a consultant to support our city. And Battelle is the largest nonprofit research institution in the world. And so having their support and the depth of their knowledge is incredibly important. So the contract basically said that we would They would provide critical resources, research, analysis of different testing options, for example, and really looking to reinforce our public health preparedness. And then also looking to the future to say, you know, let's do an after action report. When this is over, what can we say we could have done better, and how do we improve that? That work eventually transformed into the United El Paso COVID-19 Task Force that was endorsed by both the City of El Paso and the county. That task force is being chaired by Dr. Ocaranza, the health authority, and Dr. Alozi. He's a phenomenal infectious diseases doctor who is the chief medical officer right now at HCA. And if you are looking for a phenomenal speaker to come talk to your group, I should put you in contact with Dr. Alozi. He would really wow you. And so the committee is made up of all sorts of medical doctors, public health professionals, and then a representative from City Council and from county commissioners. So we actually presented to City Council and the county our short-term recommendations on July 20th. Actually, next week, we will be formally delivering the scorecard, which I'll go over with you in a moment. And then we've already started to develop some mid and long-term recommendations to be delivered to both city and county in September. As a result of this work, we have really been focusing on employer, school, and county testing and how to improve and expand those, and also some school reopening support. You know what, and this might be a good time for, speaking of employer testing, for a couple of our polling questions. Could you go ahead and put up the first polling question? We're going to test this technology out. Okay, we're seeing responses come in. Actually, quite a few under no COVID activity, and a few with just having a positive case come through. Not seeing anybody with an outbreak or a false alarm. So that's good. I think that's actually consistent with my, at the medical center, we've had, you know, somebody come up positive, but we're able to contain that. You know, same with many of the people I've talked to. Could we go on to the second polling question? Okay. This one is about how many of you have a COVID-19 testing and contact tracing plan in place at your place of employment. Okay. Looks like a few people have a plan in place, and a larger group of people are still working on the plan, which sounds pretty consistent with a lot of what's going on in the community. Just to let you know, there are a few resources for you that might be helpful in developing your plan. And in particular, the Better Business Bureau has several different grants and are really, I think, doing a great job at supporting the response. And they did receive quite a few grants from the City of El Paso with the CARES Act. And so I would refer you there. And also, if anyone has any big questions on their plan, you can also send them to me, and I will try to hook you up with a good public health professional to help you answer any questions you might have. Okay, we'll do some more polling questions in a little bit. And we'll go on to the next slide. So just to let you know, some of what Battelle is actually doing in the region is that they're supporting our emergency operations center. They actually sent the head of their healthcare and pandemic response team, Dr. Nicole Brennan, to El Paso. She was here for about 2 weeks, embedded in the EOC, kind of analyzing what they're doing and providing support, and actually reaching back into their places, their labs and offices in Ohio for additional support. They are also supporting with PPE. Many of you might be on my weekly PPE and employer testing call that we have every Friday. If you're not on that and you want to be involved in that, send me a note as well, and I'll add you to the invitation list. They do support that work. We were able to get one of Battelle's N95 decontamination units into El Paso. And so that unit is being operated by the Emergency Operations Center and Border Rack. And we are able to decontaminate up to 80,000 N95 masks per day that will allow for that N95 mask to be reused between 4 and 20 times. And also we're working to develop a donor program where hospitals could donate used N95 masks. And hopefully we're trying to figure out a mechanism to get those into Juarez where they're in very, very short supply of PPE. Okay, they're also helping with testing and contact tracing. So there are a lot of questions about testing. So analyzing the different types of tests. As many of you know, there's the nasal swab, there's the spit test, there's the finger prick test, and understanding what those different tests mean and what are the false positive and false negative rates of those tests is really important. Something to note is that we extended the Battelle work into Juarez so that their work could be binational, and they have a lot less support, I would say, in Juarez regarding questions like this, and so they have been a tremendous, tremendous support to them. They are actually staffing the United COVID Task Force, so they have Battelle consultants in every subcommittee, really managing that whole background noise going there. And so that's really important work that they are doing here. I just mentioned the PPE and the private sector testing call that we have each week. Those have been really kind of more like project management meetings, making sure that these conversations move along. The work started early on with the PPE committee when PPE was all the discussion, right? We didn't have enough access to PPE in our community. And so one of our board members actually put together, I would call it a marketplace. And he vetted many different vendors to make sure that the vendors on her list were not price gouging and were actually getting you the PPE that you thought you were ordering, which was actually a problem, right? So you would get a sample that was one thing and your order of 5,000 would come in differently. So she vetted all these vendors, puts them up on a website now. The Paso del Norte Health Foundation has a COVID-19 website. Each week she refreshes this list of vendors. In it, it talks about quantities of PPE required for orders, costs, and PPE also includes like the plexiglass windows and the hand sanitizers and unique things like the face masks that have a plastic front so that children can maybe see teachers' mouths moving, you know, or if in your business you might serve hearing impaired clients, being able to show your lips, I think is very important. And then the whole question of testing has come up. Of course, we want to make sure to reserve the city's testing resources for symptomatic patients as much as possible, or people who think they might have been exposed. But in order for an effective reopening strategy with our employers, they need to be able to have a testing strategy. I asked you if you had any plans in place. Some employers would like to test a certain sample of their employees every week, but we don't want to overwhelm the city with all these employers using our testing system. So we're trying to figure out a testing lab situation that would be effective for employers and eventually schools to use for their needs as we all need to get back to work and restart our economy. Another thing that we have done a lot of work with is our organization, Bio El Paso Juarez, which represents about 42 companies in El Paso and Juarez in the medical device manufacturing field. So when all of this started, there was a scare that the manufacturing industry in Juarez would shut down. So we put together a special coronavirus task force for these members and worked very closely with the consulate, the U.S. consulate in Juarez, to make sure that the factories didn't get shut down, that they implemented effective plans to keep their employees safe, that they got access to some testing. And we now just won a grant from the city of El Paso to help manufacturers, existing manufacturers in El Paso, become certified to be medical device manufacturers. So hopefully, speaking of silver lining and positive in the future of our region, hopefully we can see a huge increase in medical device and PPE production in this community, which would be really great for our ecosystem. We have been hosting a series of webinars over the last few months on how the medical and public health fields will be transformed by the coronavirus, on healthy, safe school reopening plans, on the international and border health issues with coronavirus. We're talking to you all today. We're going to be talking to medical students on the impact of coronavirus on our community, the impact on our medical device industry, and then we'll be also doing a mental health webinar. So helping schools prepare for the mental health and emotional being of their students coming in. So let's go ahead and with this one, launch another poll, the next polling question. How many parents in the room are ready to send their kids back to school in person? And I put a series of dates on September 8th, October 1st, January 1st, spring 2021, or fall 2021. Looks like we're getting a whole lot of variety on this one. Yeah, it's a very scary time, I would say, to be sending our kids back to school. But as I mentioned, we also have to get back to work. So there are a lot of parents that really need to get their kids back to school. And the whole school reopening thing, I mean, I jump to my CNN app every morning to see what's the latest news on school reopenings across the country. Because again, I think we're in a wait and see situation right here in El Paso to see what happens with us. And again, I think the more time we delay, I think I heard a rumor, I'm not sure if it's official yet, that EPASD might be delaying now till October. But those extra weeks allows the schools to be a little bit more prepared, to make sure that they have a testing plan, to make sure that their physical modifications are adequate, to make sure that they're prepared for the mental health issues that they're going to have to deal with. So much work to be done. Another big area that we don't talk enough about is Juarez. You know, we don't see a lot of numbers about the infection rates in Juarez. I will tell you that they do not have sufficient testing capacity in Juarez or anywhere throughout Mexico. And so it makes it difficult to understand what's going on over there and ultimately what would the impact be on us. So a lot of people don't know that there are about 150,000 US citizens living in the state of Chihuahua. So all of those US citizens, if the situation got really bad in the state of Chihuahua regarding coronavirus, could come across the border to seek care here in El Paso. And so it really behooves us to make sure that our partners across the border have the support they need to get through this pandemic effectively. So one of the efforts, in addition to trying to get PPE and other N95 masks and other things to Juarez, is that we have started an event that we call the COVID-19 El Paso Juarez Medical Community Exchange. And this is an event every Thursday evening for the last 2.5 months, where we have about 150 doctors from Juarez invited, and then a handful of Spanish-speaking doctors from El Paso. And each week we provide different content to these doctors, whether it's on how to effectively implement telemedicine in your practice, to how to, what's happening with coagulation and pulmonary embolism in their patients, how to treat pregnant COVID positive patients. And what it's also doing is creating a network between the physicians in Juarez and the physicians in El Paso, a network that really has degenerated over the last couple of decades because of the violence in Juarez and the lack of travel between the border, the way that we used to travel across the border. And so this is really reforming a network that used to exist. And with all the new recruits that we have to El Paso through the medical school, we have a lot of new doctors from Colombia and from Puerto Rico who have never been to Juarez, but they're great Spanish speakers for me. And they're giving a lot of great presentations. And they're really forming a really nice network with their counterparts in Juarez. And so this is exciting. And this is one of the things that we hope to continue and really formalize into a long-standing relationship cross-border. The medical students in Juarez will soon start to get credit for attending these sessions. And we've recently created a website that holds all the recordings of the videos, protocols, and other information that the doctors can share across the border. And now this is just a snapshot of the work that we've been doing with the United COVID Task Force. This is the scorecard that you might have heard about in other communities, and you'll hopefully start hearing about more here in El Paso. But what this is saying is that there are several different metrics that are important for us as a community to meet before we think we should enter into new phases of reopening. And this is an eye chart, so I'm not going to go into it very closely. But everything in that scorecard really ties back to recommendations that we have provided to the city and the county. And the first recommendation was to create this scorecard. And then also to make sure that all the recommendations that we put forward are regional, cross-sector, public, private, and collaborative. The first key metric is the infection rate. So we want to make sure that our infection rate over consecutive 14 days with 7 rolling day averages are decreasing before going into different stages of reopening. So there's a lot of numbers in here. I'm not going to go through it all, but that's one important indicator of whether we should continue our reopening strategy. The second area is regarding diagnostic testing. So do we have sufficient testing capability in our community to move through these different stages? Is the supply chain broken and it's hard to get an appointment? If it takes 5 days to get an appointment for a test and 10 days to get a result, that's basically a junk test. It didn't help you modify your behavior in any way. If you thought you were COVID positive when you made the appointment, you probably should have gone into quarantining and not gone for a test. So making sure we have good testing is important. The next metric is case and contact tracing. So part of the reason we need tests is to be able to alert other people who have been exposed to a positive person that they've been exposed so that they can test or isolate. So we need to have sufficient staff and capabilities to do effective contact tracing as a community. The next is, how is our healthcare system prepared for this crisis? Do they have enough PPE? Do we have enough ICU beds available for COVID patients, right? So are our hospitals able to see more patients coming into their system? Very important for reopening. And then lastly, we again live in a particular place. So looking at our at-risk populations, whether those are people in shelters or nursing homes or in rural communities, are we prepared to service these communities? And so this scorecard will be presented next week to City Council and County Commission, and we're hoping that our elected officials will adopt this and take these factors into consideration when they're looking at reopening. And then there were just a few other recommendations that did not fit squarely into the scorecard. This is a lot about collaboration. It's about doing some performance improvement reports, so kind of after action studies, and looking at other communities who maybe did better or worse, and making sure that our public health department and collaborations are where they need to be effective in the future. So really what are our long-term goals is that this pandemic has changed how we live and work and learn, and we really should be the authors of our new normal of this public health and economic emergency, emerging stronger and more resilient. So the future of everything, what should our new normal goals be? And we really have to find a balance between public health and economic development, because if people can't feed their problems, that's a different public health problem. So how can we find that balance? Collaboration is key. The pandemic response cannot come solely from our public health department. It requires businesses and schools to play a part. It requires our nonprofit organizations to come together. It requires cross-border collaboration. And then it requires a robust healthcare ecosystem. So let's take time now to look at the cracks that were uncovered during this pandemic, and let's put forth great efforts to make our healthcare ecosystem as strong as it can be to serve our community. And then innovation. These disruptions in our life force innovation. I want to be at the forefront of that innovation. So what can we learn, and how can we innovate and take advantage of all of this? So there's lots of ways that you can get involved with this effort, whether funding the ongoing contract with Battelle as they go into more of a transition plan and looking to the future. We have lots of different committees that you can participate in. Again, just send me a note if you heard anything interesting that you want to get involved in. And then education, letting people know about these efforts is important, and referring people to, to these resources is also very important. And I'll stop there. Take any questions if anyone has a question.
Emma, I have a question. What's a place that we could search, or is there a template for a plan for reopening? We have a lot of members who, when it's safe, they're eager to see each other, interact with each other. What are some guidelines that we could follow or seek, or such a plan?
So an employer reopening plan?
In this instance, for ourselves, for the organization, our weekly meeting, one of the things that we should have in place, or start putting in place right now to plan ahead for that.
Okay, I can try to get you something. So this would be, how could you start to have in-person meetings in the near future?
What are the items that we need to be looking at to have this in place?
Okay.
And you could send us an email on that, a good reference starting point for us to start taking a look at.
Sure, happy. And I would say that is actually probably going to follow the scorecard as well, right? So if we're having, if we have a resurgence or a second wave in the fall, something that's going to get really confusing later is the flu season's going to start up. Just seasonal colds are going to start up. The flu, a cold, and the coronavirus can present very, very similarly, right? So we could think we're having coronavirus outbreaks when we're having an influenza outbreak. If our testing can't tell us what's happening, there's going to be a lot of shutdowns and pullbacks. So we can definitely give you a suggestion based on the foundation room, what would be a good reopening strategy for those different phases.
I have a question. This hydrochloroquine and zinc and all this that people are suggesting,
Yes.
what is there a wives' tale? What's going on in terms of any kind of cure, and if that happens, are they still prescribing it, or what is going on in that area? And the other one
Sure.
is, can we get testing done at like when you go to WellMed or someplace that you can do it without having to get in line and
Yes.
in the car and so on and so forth?
I will say that there are many urgent cares that are providing testing. And so if you just Google, Red Road Urgent Care, those different ones, you have to call and make an appointment. And at that time, you can ask them if they do COVID testing. But I do know many people who have gone to urgent care and gotten a test. I know I thought I had my own personal scare and I tried to get an appointment. It took 5 to 6 days at that point in time. That was late July, mid to late July. It was taking 5 or 6 days to get an appointment for a test everywhere in town. That's lightened up a little bit, but yeah, if you don't want to get in line, I would say the urgent care is your best bet. The other thing that I'll do is I will email to Yasser and he can email it out. The Society for Infectious Diseases published a paper that is on their website. So you can just Google the Infectious Diseases Society and you'll see a paper, but I'll email it to you all. And what it does is it analyzes all the different therapeutics, hydroxychloroquine, rezednavir, I can't say that one, all the Z-Pak, and it analyzes what the data is on whether or not it's effective. And so I think the conclusion of that paper was really that, antibiotics, steroids, and the rezednavir were the most effective treatments, and hydroxychloroquine was not, and it was causing some problems, heart issues in a lot of patients. And so you don't want to cause another problem with a drug.
Any more questions?
Yes, Emma, there for Juarez, it is going to be a while probably for any vaccines to come out. Although I heard Mexico was trying to adopt some of the alternatives from Abbott or what have you. But has there been success with the convalescent plasma transfusions? Is that a legitimate strategy for us here and maybe along the border where it might be a while before we can get everybody vaccinated?
Yes, most certainly. There are 2 companies in El Paso doing the convalescent plasma, taking the plasma, and some of our healthcare facilities are in fact using this. So I know they're doing it at University Medical Center, I believe at Tenet hospitals as well. I'm not sure about HCA, but at this point I think they would be. But the convalescent plasma is showing effectiveness, which is fantastic. So it's just taking people who have antibodies in their system and flooding a sick person's body with the antibodies. I did host a lecture in Juarez about a month ago on the convalescent plasma. It was very well attended because I think the doctors in Juarez were very curious about how to implement that there. And so hopefully that becomes available soon. I think the question that everybody is having, though, is that we still don't know how long the antibodies last in your system. And so is immunity 3 months or 6 months or forever? That is not answered yet.
I have a question on closing down. You mentioned it as a possibility. I really don't know if I ever think of any possibility of closing a place down, but I don't know what it would look like.
Of another reclosing? Yeah, if it would go back to looking like what we did in April, when all the schools shut down completely and only essential companies were able to be open, right? So that's the kind of reclosing that we're hoping to avoid again because of how painful that was. I would say that if we did have another reclosing, we've learned a lot in the last few months about the virus. And there are a lot of, I think a reclosing would be a much smarter reclosing the second time around. For example, I don't think parks should have ever been closed. I think parks with respect, with people stay socially distanced, are a great place for people to have meetings outside, socially distanced, to let your kids run around and get some exercise instead of being cooped up at home all the time. Outdoor dining seems to be very effective. And so we've had time to test out these different theories. And if there is another reclosing, I think that they would be smarter. I think everybody has realized that bars stay shut down a long time. In bars, after people have a couple of drinks, they forget to social distance. The behaviors go out the window, and that's where we've seen massive outbreaks. So let's keep bars shut for a while so that we can reopen our schools and our other businesses. So those are the kind of smarter shutdowns that might happen in the future. But I think we all need to be prepared for strategies, good work from home strategies, good homeschooling strategies, in case our numbers go up in the next few months.
And on behalf of the Rotary Club of El Paso, we want to thank you for joining us today. We love your passion. Every time we see you every year, but every year it's something different. You're always up to something new. It amazes me, your energy. And I love the passion that you have for our region. You're an excellent spokesperson for our region. You do amazing things. And we think you have a Rotary in your DNA somehow. But thank you so much for speaking with us.
I will be a Rotarian one day when my kids are a bit older, and I have a lot of respect for your club and for your members, and thank you for the great work that you all do.
Thank you, Emma. We'll keep an eye on how we could help. I'll take a look at those committees, and thank you so much for being a part of the program today. And Mark, thank you for putting this excellent program together.
Absolutely.
Virtual applause. Thank you so much.
Everyone stay safe.
Thank you very much. And I also like to acknowledge that our Rotaract Club is online. Brian and I thank you for joining us, and he might have a couple of folks from his team as well. Brian, thank you for joining us. Next week, we have another amazing program. Next week's Zoom speaker is Richard Wells, EP County Sheriff. It's going to be a very interesting program. And folks, we are hitting 40s, mid-40s in participation. We're always up to something new. Let's get through these tough times together, and look forward to seeing everyone next week. Remember, guys, Rotary opens opportunities in your daily life. See how we could open up an opportunity for someone. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week. I'm going to ring this bell and meeting adjourned. Thank you.